Back by popular demand.
Look who's back. It's Mr. Drinky Bird.
I know we're happy to see him. What
Yes,
about you?
he's nodding with happiness. I'm happy to see him.
I'm happy to see you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
likewise.
So here we are, and you are too. Welcome to This Is Now.
Bridge to a Better World. I'm Teresa Mitchell, and that's Ani Raven Haynes.
And usually we just sort of banter for a moment.
Yeah,
Banter.
Um,
That's what Drinky Bird's for.
how-
Actually,
how-
it's to help us banter.
how about that Drinky Bird?
Go
No,
Drinky Bird smash state. Oh,
I wonder. I first had a Drinky Bird. My grandfather gave me one when I was about 5, and it was a different Drinky Bird.
not this very Drinky Bird.
It had, if I recall correctly, it had a balsa wood hat, not a plastic one.
Little dudette slowing down.
It had some sort of covering on it. I don't know what it was made of. It wasn't plastic though because it rotted. I remember that. Eventually, because I was so fond of it, I made Drinky Bird go all day, every day.
Oh, it was like velveteen.
Okay, velveteen.
It was sort of a strange velveteen sort of
Cloth head.
Yeah, my gran had one of those.
Yeah, and more interesting on the inside was not the chlorhydrate of whatever is in there, but ether, which made Drinky Birds rather popular for a while until the industry caught on to the fact that heads were getting it not to watch it bob back and forth, but to make their own heads bob back and forth.
And I'm just going to say, while we are in fact bantering, is there a duck? Duck, just for a moment, duck. Oh, not quite ducking enough. There is a cat right behind your head.
Oh, the cat, yes.
Yeah. She is. She's there. Okay.
She's presiding over the proceedings.
Just know that she is there directly behind Teresa's head. Shall we get started?
Chairman of the Hopefully Not Board.
Let's do this thing, shall we?
Yes. Let's talk UFOs. U.S. Senate yesterday passed a National Defense Authorization Act 86-11 that contains multiple and far-reaching provisions related to unidentified anomalous phenomena, or UAPs, which is what they call UFOs these days, because sometimes they ain't flying, I guess. The Senate added the entire Intelligence Authorization Act to the fiscal year 2024 National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA, including UAP-related provisions earlier approved by the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. And the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence met earlier this week. And I've been thinking about that a lot. After approving the final package under the bill number HR 2670, the Senate sent to a conference committee with the House of Representatives. There was only one minor UAP-related provision in the NDAA version that the House passed on July 14th, including the Senate passed package, is the Schumer-Rounds UAP Disclosure Act to establish an agency to gather UFO records from throughout the government with presumption of immediate disclosure. There's a lot more to it than that. And the reporting on it has been very bad and very snarky. Most of the reason is because a lot of people are getting into it and trying to get up to speed at the very last minute without having followed this issue at all, because it's always been intentionally very embarrassing to follow this issue. But the fact is, there has been sufficient evidence of a deeply hidden and covertly funded program or programs loosely within the Defense Department and its contractors. They are doing something, and a very bipartisan committee, bipartisan as in Matt Gaetz and AOC working together practically hand in hand. I mean, not really hand in hand, but that's how close they were.
But still, that's weird.
They're working together, and they want to know what is going on. And the establishment very clearly, especially the Pentagon, is pushing back very hard and very unfairly to make sure that whatever it is that they're hiding does not come out. Now, another reason this is significant is because they've also hidden their full budget for years and years from audits. Congress has said, we want to see an audit from you. They haven't asked for granular detail. They just want to know basically where the billions are going. And the Pentagon, for the last 5 years at least, has said, in technical terms, fuck you. This is very, very bad in terms of any last semblance of democratic government. So that's a big part of it, actually. It's like by way of finding out what the hell they're doing with, and frankly, it is actually craft from somewhere. We don't know from where. We could also find a lot of these other hidden programs and just stashes of money that we occasionally blunder into, Moneyball, so to speak. The other interesting thing that really got me was an aspect of all this, which was that Congress asked, because of the disclosures and because of the top secret status and nature of the disclosures, they asked for a secure hearing room, which is done all the time, and they were denied. By whom, I don't know, but it has never in the history of the United States been denied. This has never happened. So something's happening. You can be absolutely sure. And you don't have to decide that it's, little green men, ha ha. That's the phrase, by the way, if you want to stick up your nose at it. So enough of that. From the labor front, good news. Robert Reich, former Secretary of Labor under Carter, right? Writes, what would have been one of the biggest labor strikes in U.S. history has likely been averted as Teamster reps agreed to a tentative contract with the UPS. The contract must now be voted on by the 340,000 unionized UPS workers. Hello, Mr. Fish. Thanks for tuning in. The tentative deal reportedly includes $30 billion in wage increases for all UPS employees, including part-timers, elimination of the two-tier wage system, the establishment of MLK Day as a paid holiday for all workers, and a ban on driver-facing cameras in truck cabs, as well as forced overtime on drivers' scheduled days off. I have worked as a bus driver and had a camera pointed right at me, and our union also managed to get it. The thing is, I don't mind even if it's pointed just kind of at my head, but when it's right there in your face, it is so obnoxious. I mean, everybody picks their nose, okay, sooner or later.
It's intimidating.
It's intimidating. And they're installing air conditioning and fans in delivery trucks. Not enough. A lot of the trucks will still just have fans, and those dashboards can generate like 140 degrees. It's so awful on a really hot day. And a fan will not be enough. So we're still, in the next few years, going to hear about drivers dying. It's happened. Temperatures in the back of delivery trucks have reportedly reached 120 degrees, which has resulted in over 140 UPS employees suffering severe heat and dehydration-related injuries that we know of, that they reported, that they risked their job with since 2015. One California driver died while delivering packages last June. As a result of the tentative agreement, air conditioning will be equipped in new delivery trucks, while existing trucks will just have the fans and air induction vents. Good luck, drivers. Oh boy. So, to global warming. So many aspects of global warming have just roared to the fore in the last few weeks. Notably, the amount of draining through, what do you call those holes that the ice drains through at the top of the
Don't know.
Anyway, ice is draining through Swiss cheese holes in the mile-high glacier on top of Greenland, and it is heating as it goes further down. Hello, John, and it is moving the glacier, the mile-high, massive continent-sized glacier on top of Greenland. Extremely, extremely bad news. The melt is like other indications of global warming under this recent eruption of the El Nino phenomenon, graphing off the charts. In March, a CDC press release noted the seriousness of a global related problem, which is the emergence of a fungus that can endure the heat of the human body. We've been free of this sort of thing because fungus have not adapted to live in 98-degree heat. This is no longer true. One of the reasons The Last of Us was science fiction is that the fungus that they sort of based it off of, or the two funguses, could not have lived in the human body. Well, this fungus can. It's called Candida auris. A CDC press release noted the seriousness of the problem, citing the pathogen's resistance to traditional antifungal treatments and the alarming rate of its spread. If you get this, the doctors have to come to you sooner or later as you die and say, sorry, we don't have anything for you. Public health agencies are focused primarily on strategies to urgently mitigate transmission in healthcare settings. That's how it's happening. It's kind of an active fire they're trying to put out. That's a quote from a healthcare provider. Dr. Louis Ostrowski, a professor of infectious diseases at McGovern Medical School at UT Health Houston, UT meaning University of Texas, thinks Candida auris is kind of our nightmare scenario. He's quoted saying it's a potentially multi-drug resistant pathogen with the ability to spread very efficiently in healthcare settings. We never had a pathogen like this in the fungal infection area. The pathogen emerged spontaneously 14 years ago on 3 continents. Quoting the researcher Casa Deval, we have tremendous protection against environmental fungi because of our temperature. However, if the world is getting warmer and fungi begin to adapt to higher temperatures as well, some are going to reach what I call the temperature barrier. So continuing with global warming news, global climate crisis, climate emergency news, a young man, here, frame this in your mind. A young man goes up a mountain. He wants to study the terrain. It's a very lush, green-looking mountain. He's collecting data on his laptop while epic orchestral violins play in the background. He's an ExxonMobil scientist in a company ad that also shows other scientists in a high-tech lab working to develop low-carbon technologies, and the tagline reads, "Advancing Climate Solutions." A technical term for this is bullshit. Also, it's called greenwashing. Greenwashing is getting much worse. You can guess why. Bunkers are getting much more filled out because, well, things are getting worse, and the people who rule us have a way of dealing with it. Because unlike any of us can possibly deal with it, they can go simply inside a mountain in a vast air-conditioned area and eat food that they can stash for the next few decades. Imagine this ad again. It uses natural landscapes, futuristic-looking environments, and emotional music to evoke, and the music is very important, to evoke a positive feeling in viewers and promote the idea that ExxonMobil is not only associated with sustainable business choices, but also supporting climate solutions, rather than producing polluting fossil fuels increasingly and investing in high-carbon activities that cause climate change. To top it all off, the claim in the tagline promotes the perception that ExxonMobil and fossil fuel companies more generally are part of the solution. This is what experts refer to as a prime example of corporate greenwashing. The TV ad, which aired in 21, was shown to participants of a recent study published in 23. The study found that a one-time exposure to 2 30-second fossil fuel ads containing greenwashing was enough to positively influence individuals' opinions of the industry's efforts around transitioning to renewable energy. The study also found that this greenwashing had disturbingly persistent effects, presenting accurate data on the company's actual investments in renewable energy sources compared to their claims about the ad, did not fully reverse or correct the greenwashed ad's initial impact. In other words, it's who sat on you first. This is the nature of human brains, and they know it. When people from Europe ask you, why don't you overthrow these corporations, which, whereas they may be multinational, are very heavily based in the United States, well, they do hold us in thrall for our rents, but they also hold our brains in thrall, and they're very, very good at it. Whenever I see this sort of brainwashing, and I know you too, it just absolutely puts me in a rage. I'm just spitting and boiling.
She does.
Doesn't matter where I'm at, I'll go off.
Indeed. It's true. I can vouch.
Yeah, so that is the sum total of the written materials that I bring to today's presentation.
Well then, I just wanted to add that, this is...
Drinky Bird.
Well, yes.
I'm sorry, you want to add that?
Yeah, that the... when the top Secretary General, as opposed to the little Secretary General of the UN, Guterres, has basically said that we are living in the era of global boiling. And July is really looking like it's the hottest month on record for our planet since we've been record-keeping beings here. So he went on to say that the temperatures have been related in heat waves throughout North America, Asia, and Europe, and along with wildfires in countries like Canada and Greece, and that they're having major impacts on people's health right now. We can no longer say, global warming, I wonder how that's going to work out in the future. I wonder how that's going to hurt people in the future. It's, in fact, killing people now. It has been for years, but the people that it has been killing are generally folks in South Asia who have been victims of increased monsoons over the last decade. But now we see it really generalizing to most of the globe. And we are seeing temperatures over most of Spain was over 40 Celsius. That's 105 Fahrenheit. There have been, I think, Turkey was hitting 112 or so last week. Greece, of course, we see the wildfires and people being evacuated, really in many spots of Europe. And so when the chickens come home to roost, as it were, when it's no longer happening to those people far away that can be ignored by the press of the northern hemispheres, what happens? What do we do? Is this actually going to be enough of a wake up call to get people into uh, action? And when I say people, I mean those that actually write the policies and make the rules. Is it going to be enough to actually spur them to make the changes that are necessary to start mitigating the harm that is being done? Even if we were to go into full reverse, like tomorrow, which ain't happening, like under no project like that, can I? We will still continue to see the devastating effects of this change. So the sooner we can start mitigating, the more mitigation can be had, I suppose, is what I'm going to say to that.
Yeah, I want to add to that.
Okay.
I was just talking with my sister in Texas, and last time that there was a heat wave this long and this hot in Texas was just a few years ago, but it killed millions of trees and made everything worse. Particularly, it killed trees in urban environments where they're needed the worst. Well, the last few weeks and the next week are all well over, I think, 105, and that's going to kill trees. And in Phoenix, it's been over 110 for 25, 26 days. And that also will kill off anything except cactus. It's certainly killing people who have to live on the streets. And it has been speculated, I've noticed in the press now, that Phoenix may soon become the world's first uninhabitable city.
Yeah, and we've known for a long time that places like Phoenix and Las Vegas are particularly vulnerable to climate change. And if it hasn't been for them draining large aquifers, they would not have been inhabitable now.
Yeah, and if it weren't for power.
To this kind of extent.
Hello, Shannon in Oregon.
Okay, so I'm going to continue on here. Gutierrez says that we don't have to wait for the end of the month to know that this is the hottest month on record. He says all this is entirely consistent with predictions and repeated warnings. The only surprise is the speed of the change. Like no one, I'm departing from Gutierrez here, no one needs to be surprised that this is happening, right?
I like his metaphor,
We've been talking about this happening for quite some time. Teresa and I have both done radio about this sort of thing happening for 30 years. And many scientists, many other journalists have also been ringing the alarm bells for 30 years. And here we are, right? People in charge have ignored it and kicked the can down the road a piece. They've written very fancy protocols that can then be ignored by most of the signing countries. We haven't done diddly. And we are seeing the results of that. Back to Gutierrez, he says, climate change is here. It's terrifying. And it's just the beginning of what we're going to see.
I was literally crying over it this week. I mean,
Right. He says the era of global warming has ended and the era of global boiling has arrived. Humanity is in the hot seat. I love Gutierrez. I love how he really just sort of is frank.
Yeah, it's a good metaphor.
Frank and poetic all at the same time. Yeah. He says, for vast parts of North America, Asia, Africa, and Europe, it's a cruel summer. For the entire planet, it's a total disaster. He added, and for scientists, it is unequivocal. Humans are to blame. So, and if we are to blame, if we have caused this, we can also rewrite the rules here and we can start reversing. reversing our practices and mitigating the future harms to the next generation and the generation after that. So that's what I have to say primarily around climate change. The other thing I really want to say, goodness. I want to talk about the performative cruelty of Texas
The white grievance state.
and how, in fact, wow, look at that. I have lost my tab. I will find it again. Don't you worry.
Well, while you're looking for it, I want to say that I like the metaphor boiling because it is a change in state. And that is exactly what has happened. We have changed from
Yeah.
whatever tipping state we were into to a now chaotic state. And these statements that we still have time and make me furious. We do not have time. We're in the thick of it now.
That's really very, very true. Um,
Massive whale dyings have been catching my attention as one of the sadder things. Massive fish die-offs. Another aspect of zoonotic disease has been the cats in South Korea who have perished of H5N1, which you may recognize as bird flu, and which has been infecting. Here in Oregon, it has infected minks. It has infected a great number of mammals. The 100 whales who piled up and died in Australia yesterday, I have to wonder
yeah.
whether they look like they were sick with some pathogen.
Well, yeah. I think that 100 whales beaching themselves in mass, certainly it happens from time to time.
Now, seals,
But generally, when they are sick or when their environment has been greatly disturbed, and we are seeing record high temperatures in the oceans, of course, it's going to affect marine life health, right? And we're going to see more of this really horrifying sort of thing going on.
rolling their eyes and convulsing.
So,
poor things.
I wanted to talk about, like I said, the performative cruelty of Texas. And how, in fact, we can see that generalized to quite a lot of the U.S. Texas trying to lead the way. Florida and Texas seeming in a dead heat in a race of who can be the least humane, perhaps the least human, really, when it comes right down to it. So this is rather a long piece I've edited down from a Common Dreams article, and I'm just going to launch into it here. Zealously following the GOP dictate to inflict mindless, bloody cruelty on vulnerable people, Texas's Greg Abbott has created a hellhole state that tortures migrants with razor-wire death traps in the Rio Grande and troops pushing children back into the water. Also, ruling out having drinks and water breaks in extreme heat, bust out of sight. It's also killing workers and inmates. It's stripping healthcare and boosting harrowing non-viable births through their anti-abortion policies. So, restrictive choice, I guess I should say. So I want to just sort of, again, launch a little bit more into some of the more cruel aspects of their drummed up, politically made border crisis. The fact that it's largely a political fiction doesn't seem to stop Texas spending billions of dollars on it. Abbott has spent about $10 billion on a militarization project, and that is 3 times the amount of proposed pay increase for Texan teachers. They were asking for a little, right around $3 billion, and that was rejected. The state cannot afford it, but they can afford $10 billion to be cruel and break international laws. Let me go into that. The Operation Lone Star is a border militarization project that is, like I said, it's about $10 billion program. It consistently violates the human rights of desperate people fleeing violence that the U.S. actually has helped to create. It relies on cruelty, and it does just about nothing to actually address real problems. It does employ 10,000 ill-trained state troopers and Texas National Guards in an effort to stop what would be refugees who really began their perilous journey about 1,000 miles away, and it tries to prevent them from crossing that last 50 feet during the hottest summer in recorded history, um, deterring them from seeking the asylum that they are legally entitled to seek and get under U.S. and international law. Now, his Abbott's newly barbaric escalation of tactics include concertina wire, strung along and beneath the surface of the Rio Grande and floating barrier of barrels, wrapped in netting and razor wire that can trap those that get under them. Earlier this month, the savage truth of this program was revealed in a horrifying account in the Houston Chronicle that described troopers being ordered to push small children and babies back into the Rio Grande. We ponder that for a moment. Troopers in this militarized project being ordered to push small children and babies into a fucking river. The story quoted at length a trooper working as a medic who, disturbed by what he saw, emailed his supervisors. He described a group of about 120 migrants, including women with nursing babies, who were exhausted, hungry, and struggling near the shore. We called the shift supervisor, this trooper said. We called the shift supervisor, the shift officer in command, and we were given orders to push the people back into the water to go to Mexico. We decided this was not the correct thing to do. And so he said, with the very real potential of exhausted people drowning, we made contact with command again and expressed our concerns, and we were given the order to get in our vehicle and leave.
I've got to at least say that the ones who did not go through with it would not have been, as we did, would not have been hung at Nuremberg. But the ones who said, I was just taking orders, we hung lots of people like that.
Accounts of a 4-year-old girl passing out from heat exhaustion after being pushed back by the National Guard. Also, a 19-year-old pregnant woman doubled over in pain, having a miscarriage while caught in razor wire. A 15-year-old boy who broke his leg trying to cross in deeper water away from wire, who had to be carried by his father. Another boy stuck on a trap whose father badly cut his own leg trying to rescue him. And at least 7 more people in 1 week needing elevated medical attention, including children with lacerations requiring staples. All because of this new performative cruelty of Abbott's. The email described other atrocities. It described many of the migrants desperate and tired, not swimming well, can't swim at all. There are already almost daily reports of drownings and concertina wire, massive buoys add to that. Representative Joaquin Castro has called those massive razor wire, concertina wire wrapped buoys death traps. He said they are something one might expect to see in a country like North Korea. They've increased the risk of people drowning by forcing people into deeper and deadlier stretches of the river. The week before that email sent by the trooper that I was just mentioning, 5 people drowned. They included a mother and at least one of her 2 children who were spotted struggling to cross the river and going under. They were pulled from the water but later died, while the second child was never found.
I want to talk about the cruelty of these things, but go ahead.
A photojournalist documented another group frantically trying to get a baby, at one point face down in the water, to her mom, who was on the other side. Yep. And even in the summer's historic 100-plus degree heat, troopers have allegedly been instructed not to give any water to the migrants. An order insisted the whistleblowing trooper that needs to be immediately reversed. He says, I believe, in a model of understatement, we have stepped over the line into the inhumane. We certainly have done that. Right. So I want to move on a little bit here. Newfound infamy found in Abbott's abuse of power, not just inhumane, but illegal under our Rivers and Harbors Act that forbids installing barriers in waterways without federal authorization, has prompted the outrage it deserves. Holy shit, razor wire, wrote Jeff Tiedick. What kind of fucked up monster puts razor wire booby traps in a river? Well, the gray gabbet kind, for whom cruelty is always the point. And if migrants just stayed in the crime infested pits that the US has helped to create, they wouldn't have to drown or collapse in the heat. There's that's the reasoning, and it's just wrong. It's cruel. It's it needs to be called out like this. And one of the reasons it really needs to be called out is it's spreading, right? This is the sort of thing that the radical right believes will make them rule with impunity. That will set them up to rule in the mega fashion. They are out. They're trying to out cruel each other in I don't know, a competition to be the most fucked up rulers in our history. I'm not sure what kind of competition this is, but they do believe that this is going to appeal to that base of. You got a word?
Fascists.
Yeah, fascist loving maggots that they're not a very large percentage of our population. I'm trying to figure out why in the hell these folks think that these policies are going to make them more popular. I feel like it's kind of like a push pull. Like we will show you how strong they are, and we are, and you will love it. I don't know. So I'm gonna just run on here a little bit. I'm advancing the article. This is a really long opinion piece. It's posted to Common Dreams by Abby. Abby Z. Anyway, I'm just going to get back to this here for a moment. Oh, goodness. Where do we even start? Abbott is still busing migrants, now up to 20,000, to Democratic cities as purely a spiteful stunt. As a perverse solution to discrimination lawsuits for targeting migrant men, he's cleared out 2 state prisons and has began arresting women at an increased rate. So that's his idea of making sure that it's fair. If he's getting called out for arresting too many men, he'll just arrest more women too. They will join another fave group of victims in the Texas prisons, and that would be the prisoners that have been there. This summer, Texan prisons have become hellish ovens with recorded temperatures of up to 149 degrees. With bottled water purchases soaring, I think I heard they went up 50% in recent weeks. And of course, bottled water is necessary in prisons because otherwise, what you get, prisoners have described, looks and tastes a lot like sewage coming out of the taps. So, 30 of the 100, let's see, I'm sorry, just 30 of the 100 prisons, I think I did a bad edit here, are fully air conditioned in the state despite $32.7 billion surplus that is spent more fighting in court against AC than it would have cost to just install it. And again, that is absolutely conscious cruelty, right? You'll fight more and harder and more expensively. You'll spend more money fighting something that could relieve suffering than actually relieving the suffering, because the cruelty is the point. We also have him just having nullified local ordinances mandating water breaks for workers as workers are dropping from the heat. This is surely going to kill workers. He has stripped the right to have a water break for workers in Texas. A postal worker just collapsed and died on his route in Dallas, and in San Antonio, the mother of a 24-year-old construction worker who didn't get to see his first paycheck before dying of a heat stroke. She is suing the company that he was working for. OSHA fined the company about $13,000. They're contesting it. And while Abbott's now deemed one of the dumbest people in the country for believing a fake story about a fake festival in his own state that was trying to rile people up about homophobia. He is just continuing to manufacture these cruel, cruel policies. Um, I'm not going to get into the rest of it, which is the effects of the abortion bans in Texas and the restrictions on women's reproductive health care, or the reproductive health care of any pregnant person. It is stuff we've talked about before. And again, it is performatively cruel. Um, what do we do about Texas? What do we do about Florida? What do we do about states that are trying to out cruel each other? I personally think that there's some sort of federal, perhaps, answer. I don't know. That stokes the whole fear of like, well, that's big government
Yeah, well,
sticking their nose in our business.
yes, well, there are federal laws, for example, uh, for work breaks, and Biden simply needs to enforce them, and that might take troops, and I'm okay with that. I've been holding back because I want to finally describe those barrels because they don't look so scary from a distance. But if you ever cross the Rio Grande in the summer, and I have at Ciudad Acuna, you know that it's between 1 and 3 feet deep. And these barrels are specifically designed for that. They look like they're floating lightly on the water, but they're really very large. And they're heavy plastic, and they're covered with concertina wire, which is razor wire. And the way they work is they roll, so you can't get under them without being ground with, your belly being ground into the grit, and the concertina razors being dug into your back. They're intended to lacerate you, and without medical care, if you try to cross under them, they will kill you. You can't cross over them because they rotate. So they are deliberately murder and torture devices.
As Castro called out, and it's important to, in fact, call them what they are. This is America, yeah. This is the same America that has participated in enslavement and genocide of people since our beginning. It's not the America we were taught about in third grade in our civics classes. And, this is my call out to try to get this country that we live in to really reflect much more the values we were taught about, that, we stand up for human rights in this country, right?
Right.
I would like to see us start. I guess that's where I'm at.
Yes. Well,
is there anything else from you? Do we shift now?
I say we shift.
Okay. Shifting. I want to thank you all for joining us this morning. It's been a pretty harrowing week of news when we are looking at the world, our global home, and the crisis it's in. It's been absolutely infuriating, to say the least, and heartbreaking to see the dangers that our entire planet is facing. And I think that we can either choose the path of mutual aid, cooperation, and getting some grounded action moving us in a good direction, or we perish together. And that's kind of looking like, of course, that's the path of business as usual. And I'm here to say I hope we can stop that. I also want to just pay a moment of honor, I guess, to Sinead O'Connor, who, in fact, I think gave everything she had to call out the horrors of this of our world, and really threw herself into the fray of trying to make the world a better place, not only through her music but through her words and actions. And I will miss her. So I have this tarot reading. The tarot reading is the Hierophant. It's the Hermit inversed. It's the King of Pentacles inversed. What does all this mean? Well, it means that we have potentially someone who is attempting to control us, dominate us with rules, an authority figure in our lives, somebody who does not mind not playing fair to win. It is a potentially, somebody who is, well, cruel in our lives. it's important to know the rules so we can bend them. It's important to come out of hiding. Hiding away is not going to work to move past the situation. And the more, I pulled these cards and I'm like, this is interesting. I'm not sure. And the more I'm looking at this reading after looking at the cruelty of the state, I'm wondering if maybe it is not a little more broad and political a reading this morning than really might apply to our personal lives. It is a reading that encourages us to not hide away and to not be afraid and to face those that would dominate and manipulate with their rules and laws. Whether those are in fact personal rules in our lives, the rules of the family, as it were, the unstated rules of the family, and how abuse and abusers in our lives can manipulate those rules to hurt us. It also looks a lot like the situation of the state. So I think it applies in either way, the micro or the macro. The answer is to stop hiding, to think about how to creatively get around rules, to look at what actions are needed to safeguard our lives, to make each other safer, to support each other, and to reach out and connect instead of hide in isolated ways. That's what the cards say. The Hierophant and the inverted King of Pentacles, the inverted Hermit. So, with that,
I'd like to thank you for the comments. Pardon me while I use the reading glasses to check them out. First Canary chimed in at the onset of the Industrial Revolution, late 1800s, from John. Jabara said, does Abbott have a staff hired to create torture? He doesn't think of all this himself. I think that's a good point.
That's
There's got to
an
be a
excellent
research
point.
and development, torture development in Texas.
Man, that is just mind-blowing to think about. But yeah, I think you're right, Jabara.
And I will arbitrarily and unfairly not read all the comments.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us this morning. Really appreciate it. Appreciate you being with us. Whenever you view this video, please do hit the like button if you haven't already done that. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't already done that. You might also want that notification bell so you are reminded when we go live, whenever that might be. But it's almost always Friday mornings at 9. Let's see. With that, yeah, I think that's everything.
With that, Drinky Bird can bid
Let
you
us
adieu.
wrap. Thanks very much for joining us. Take care.
And all the ships at sea. Bye-bye. Drinky